Hello, welcome to the first official video here on my YouTube account. I am Amanda Warfield. Today we're going to be talking all about how to simplify your content creation. And my whole goal as an educator, as a business owner, is to help other business owners simplify their marketing because frankly, we don't have time to only market our business, but it's such an important part of our businesses. For those who don't know me yet, I'm Amanda Warfield. I am the host of the Chasing Simple podcast, the author of the book Chasing Simple Marketing, and I have been educating other business owners on how to simplify their marketing since 2020. And so this is just something I'm super passionate about, and I want to make sure that other business owners are able to run their business effectively and do what they love without having to spend all of their time marketing. I was a solopreneur for years and years and years, I think 4 or 5 years before I actually first got help. And so I realized really quickly that in order to be able to market my business well and actually also move the needle in my business, that I needed to be able to market in a way that wasn't going to take up all of my time because marketing can easily do that. And so I just want to help others do that as well. So, what I'm going to talk about today are 3 ways that you can simplify your content creation. If you are here live, please feel free to drop any questions, comments, whatever in the chat. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about this or about just simplifying your marketing in general. If you're watching the replay, go ahead and drop your comments in the comment section and I'll come back and answer them as well. I will be going live every day this week at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And then after this first week of initial launching of this channel, every Monday, 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. So I hope to see you there for all of these. I really want to do lives. One, because it's simpler for me and the way my brain works. I don't want to sit here and edit my videos, and just pre-recording videos takes forever for me personally. And so I figured live is great for that, but then also it gives me the ability to connect with you, the viewers. So I know I have so many podcast listeners. We're at over 215 episodes now of the Chasing Simple podcast. And as much as I love that, and that will definitely be continuing, I also wanted the ability to connect more within my content. So here we go. So 3 ways today, we're going to talk about those 3 ways that we can simplify our content creation. And the first thing that you can do to simplify your content creation is to create better content less often. So what I mean by that is when it comes to content creation, we often will think about, okay, I need to put out a ton of content. We think, what are best practices, right? And we search Pinterest and we say, okay, cool. How often should I be posting to Instagram? How often should I be putting out my podcast? How often should I be showing up on YouTube? So on and so forth, right? We look for those best practices. And then what we try to do is we try to do best practices for blogs and for YouTube and for Pinterest. And we try to do best practices for every single type of marketing. And we try to show up in all the places as well. We think we need to be on YouTube and podcasts and blogs and Instagram and all of that. If you can relate to that, let me know in the comments in the chat. If you feel like, yeah, I feel like I need to be all the places. I feel like I need to show up all the time. I feel like I can't do anything besides show up and create content, right? So that is something that we think about so often and that we so often struggle with is we think I've got to do best practices. Instead, I want you to remember, especially those of you that are solopreneurs or have very little help. I'm almost 8 years into my business at this point, 7 years, I think, something like that. And I have a VA that works for me 5 hours a week, and I have a podcast editor, and that's it. So even I'm not a solopreneur anymore, but I still have very, very little help. And so I get it, and I'm right there with you. And if we try to show up in all the places and we try to show up all the time, one, it's not possible. We burn out, we miss weeks, we start ghosting our audience. But two, we end up putting out content that's not that great, right? It is really, really hard and honestly impossible if you're a solopreneur to show up all the places all the time and put out quality content. So instead, what I really want to encourage you to do, show up less often, show up in less places. Don't show up on so many platforms. Just pick a top few that you can show up on and that you love and that you feel confident in and that your audience also is showing up on. So show up in less places, but also show up less often. In order to be consistent, we don't have to be constant. And that is something that I think when people say, oh, you have to show up consistently, our brains automatically think, okay, well, that means I need to show up all the time. That means I've got to show up on Instagram 5 days a week. No, it just means you have to show up consistently. And so if that means you post Instagram once a week, that's great. Just make sure you're posting once a week. If that means that you're only putting out one YouTube episode a month, that's okay. Just put out that one a month and keep it consistent, not constant. Consistent, constant, not the same thing. So that's the first thing. Less content, less places, less often. And when you show up less and you're creating less content, you're able to show up with better content. Your quality of your content is going to be so much higher than what it would be if you are simply showing up all the time and you're just trying to put out a ton of content, right? So increase the quality, which will gain you more audience, will have people coming back for more, versus, okay, well, I'm showing up constantly, but no one cares because it's not that good. So that's the first way to simplify your content. Do less, just do a whole lot less. The second way that you can simplify your content is by becoming a broken record. So a lot of times from students, I get the, okay, but how do I keep it interesting? How do I not say the same thing over and over again? I'm bored. I feel like my audience is bored. Here's the thing. Your audience sees such a teeny tiny fraction of what you actually put out. And realistically, even if they see it, when we are scrolling, when we are consuming content, a lot of the times it's in one ear and out the other, right? Or in one eye and out the other. I don't know how you would say that, but we don't really take in the message all that often. And sometimes your audience just isn't in a place to hear it. Or sometimes you need to say it in a little different way. And so, what I really encourage you to do is instead of trying to keep things fresh and new and come up with new things to say, new ideas of what to talk about the same thing over and over again, just in a little different way. And sometimes in the exact same way. I've literally reused content, like word for word, copy pasted a caption from a post that's already been posted and months later reposted that same caption and it's done better the second time. Sometimes it's just like that, right? So don't be afraid though to talk about the same thing over and over again, to reuse examples because one, your audience may not see it the first time, but two, it takes multiple times for us to really let a message sink in. If we all remembered something and a message sunk in the first time we heard it every single time, well, the world would look a lot different realistically. But sometimes we need to hear something over and over and over again. And I don't know what the numbers are anymore. I feel like it's probably changed, but we've all heard that like, oh, your audience needs to see something 7 to 10 times before they can take action on it or before they typically decide to take action on it, right? Think about that. They have to see something 7 to 10 times before taking action. And yet, only a teeny tiny percentage of your audience sees what you put out. And so, realistically, how many times do you need to put out the same piece of information for someone to see it enough times, 7 to 10 times, to then take action on it? Right? I mean, that's a lot of times to talk about the same thing over and over and over again. And so, while I'm not encouraging you to literally just word for word say the same thing over and over and over again, I also really want to encourage you be a broken record, talk about the same things repeatedly so that your audience can take that message in, but also so that they come to know you as the expert in that thing. Because what happens when we hop around from topic to topic to topic to topic, when people think of you, they don't really know how to explain what you do. I have a friend who is from California and now lives in South Carolina, and that's where we met, was in South Carolina. But she's from California. Now, the first time I met her, I don't even think I knew that she was from California. I don't think it came up. And over time, mentions of California and everything she loves about California, they made their way into the conversation. Well, now, years into our friendship, when I think of her, California is one of the first things I think about. And when I think of California, she's the first person I think about, right? But that didn't happen immediately. It didn't happen the first time she talked about California. It didn't happen the second time she talked about California. It happened over time where she consistently was a broken record and talked about California over and over and over again, right? And so we want to be that for our audience. We want to give them the tools that they need so that they know what it is that we do, so that when they think of you, they think of what it is that you do. And when they think of what it is that you do and what you're an expert in, they think of you. We want it to work, vice versa. And that only happens by being a broken record. Now, the third thing I really want to encourage you to do in order to simplify your marketing and simplify your content creation is batch your content. Now, let's just take a moment and let's do a thought exercise about baking cookies. So, let's say that you are getting ready to bake a dozen cookies. You're going to bake a batch of cookies and you get out all of your ingredients, you get out your mixing bowls, all your tools, right? And you take all of the dry ingredients for one cookie and you mix it together. And then you take the wet ingredients for that one cookie and you mix it all together. And then you put that one cookie on the pan and that pan in the oven. And then you cook that one cookie for 10 minutes, let's say. You take it out, you put it on the cooling rack, you mix the dry ingredients for the second cookie and the wet ingredients for the second cookie, and on and on and on until you've baked all 12 cookies. Just in baking time, not even mixing or cleanup, that's 120 minutes to bake 12 cookies. Or you could do what every normal sane person does when they're making a batch of cookies, and you mix all of the dry ingredients for all 12 cookies, all of the wet ingredients, you put all 12 cookies on the pan at once, and you cook them for 10 minutes. 120 minutes for 12 cookies, 10 minutes for 12 cookies. When it comes to batching, 9 times out of 10, if batching doesn't work for someone or they think it doesn't work for them, it's because they're trying to batch their content, like that first example with the cookies. They're sitting down and saying, okay, I've got 4 blog posts to write, months worth of blog posts. Okay, I'm going to write all 4 blog posts today, and I'm going to write the first one, and then I'm going to edit the first one, and then I'm going to do all the graphics and scheduling for the first one, and then I'm going to start writing the second one, and then it's going to be dinner time, and I'm exhausted, and I didn't even finish 2. And people think the batching doesn't work for them. Because what they're doing is they're batching by cookie or they're batching by piece of content instead of batching by step. So, similar to the cookies, what you want to do is you want to take a chunk of content and you want to break it into steps. So, you want to say, okay, I'm going to outline all 4 blog posts, and that's a step. And then the next day, you're going to rough draft all 4. And that's a step. And then the next day, you're going to edit and finalize and finesse all 4. And that's a step. And then I'll schedule all 4. And so you chunk it into steps instead of pieces of content, just like you chunk it into steps versus cookies, number of cookies. And so you're able to minimize the amount of time it would take, but also you're able to save a lot of mental capacity that way instead of trying to just cram 4 blog posts into a single day. You're able to break it up and get them all done and batch them all out without just killing your mindset. So those are the 3 ways that I would highly recommend that you simplify your content creation. If you are here live and you have questions, please drop them in the chat. At this point, we can continue chatting. I can answer questions that you have, or we can be done for the day, but I'd love to chat if you're here with me live. If you're not here with me live and you're watching this later, but you have questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll come back to them later. And be sure to answer them for you because, again, I want to make sure that you are able to simplify your content. So, with simplifying your content creation, those 3 steps, just to reiterate, first and foremost, better content less often. When you don't have to create as much content, it's not going to take you as long, and so it simplifies it. Second way to simplify your content creation is by being a broken record. When you don't have to come up with new things to say, it's a lot easier to create content, and it doesn't take as long. And then the third thing is to batch your content. I cannot recommend enough how important it is to batch your content by step instead of by piece, because when you can do it by step, you're able to save a ton of time and it makes creating that content and staying consistent so much simpler. Now, I would love it if you would pop into the description below and I will share my freebie. It's an audio training and it's 8 tips on simplifying content creation and making that process go a whole lot faster. So if you like this video and you want more, I've got 8 tips for you in this audio training that I think you're really going to enjoy. I will be live again tomorrow and every day this week up until next Monday. And starting next Monday, we'll then go weekly. So I will see you here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you for all of you that are here live. And for those of you that are joining and catching the replay, thank you for being here. I'll see you soon.